Welcome into draft night coverage on Flight Plan. Tim McMaster here, along with Zack Rosenblatt. He covers the Jets for The Athletic, and we are covering the Jets' first-round pick here in 2025. At number 7, it's Armand Membou. No surprise there. We figured it was either going to be him or Warren, and it ended up being him. We're going to get to that. I want to kind of set up the draft to that point too, Zack, where it was, as far as the picks go, we were very much chalk here, right? Like number 1, Cam Ward to the Titans. Number 2, Travis Hunter. Number 3, Abdul Carter. Number 4, Will Campbell. 5, Mason Graham. 6, little bit Ashton Gentry. 6 to the Raiders. We knew that was possible. But what wasn't chalk was who made those picks, because we got a big trade at number 2, which nobody really thought was coming here. The Cleveland Browns, Michael Dunn's Cleveland Browns. Well, I guess not officially, but anyway, the Cleveland Browns slide back to number 5. Jacksonville slides up to number 2 to get Travis Hunter. The Browns get the 5th pick, 2nd round pick from the Jags, 4th round pick from the Jags, and their 1st rounder next year.
Crazy.
Slide back 4 picks and get Mason Graham to make that defense that much stronger. I mean, to me, Travis Hunter, he could be a player that just like is the face of the NFL. And if that happens, good for Jacksonville. But if I'm the Browns, I know the fans are probably annoyed because they were thinking of Travis Hunter, the face of the NFL. But when you look at the package, this is pretty good for the Browns. And they could use one of those first rounders next year, theirs or Jacksonville's, to get a quarterback, which they really need.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Jacksonville, I mean, look, if they're banking on Travis Hunter being basically 2 players in one and being a generational talent, like you get it in that sense, but they gave up a lot to move up.
Yeah.
Like 3 spots essentially. 3 spots. So, like you better hit on Travis Hunter. Even if you do, he's a non-quarterback. Like it's pretty rare that teams trade up and give up that much to get a non-quarterback. To your point, like the Browns, like it's hard to turn that trade down. The Browns are not a player away either. I think the Jaguars are still going to be bad. So you have a 1st round pick next year that could be, assuming they're not a playoff team at minimum, that's, in the top 15 or something like that. So
you could have 2 top 10 picks, really.
Yeah, you could have 2 top 10 picks. I mean, if Trevor Lawrence gets hurt or is not good, and we don't know who Liam Cohen is, and the roster's kind of weird. So, that was some juice. And I'd heard that there were teams that were trying to trade up to number 5. So the Browns would have traded back again, and they would have taken Ashton Gentry ahead of the Raiders, because I think teams were fearful of him taking them. In this class, everybody has talked about how there's like 3 like elite, like blue chip guys, and that's Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, and Ashton Gentry. And so there are teams that really, really wanted him. The Raiders wound up doing it. Pete Carroll was doing it. I forgot that he used to do this. I guess he was doing like tweet teases about what they might do. I don't know if it was all smoke or like if it actually meant anything, but he was having a little fun with it. But it was chalk kind of ahead of the Jets, because I know there was maybe some feeling like, okay, maybe Mason Graham will fall. Some experts have him falling out of the top 10 even. But
I saw some ESPN had the Jets taking him too at 7.
Yeah,
which would have been interesting.
But throughout this process, I've said he's probably not going to be there at 7. I think the assumption has been that. So in terms of the players that were taken ahead of the Jets, it wound up being what we thought. I've talked about this to people in the Discord and Badlands and friends and other reporters. Like over the last 48 hours, the Jets have been tied to pretty much every possible prospect that they could potentially pick at number 7. Like there was noise about Jahdae. I mean, even Jahdae Barron, who's not a top 10 player, who we talked about, Connor Rogers. He was reported by like Adam Schefter and Albert Breer. And then you have Jalen Walker. There was a lot of noise for him over the last 24 hours. Connor Hughes reported about T-Mac, Tatoria McMillan, not Tet, which I keep trying to tell people. Nobody will listen. He was reported. Tyler Warren, there's been reported interest in him a long time. And then, ESPN also kept reporting that Kelvin Banks was the one they preferred, not Armand Membou. Well, the whole time Membou was clearly the guy they liked. I think they did a lot of work on him. We're going to get into him specifically in a minute, obviously. But anyway, just, I get so tired. I always forget every year how much I hate pre-draft time, because the rumors are just rampant. Everybody just kind of throws shit out there, and there's not really any checks and balances for it. It's just a lot of, oh, this team likes this guy, but they're all couching it because they're not actually sure, because you can't really be sure in the draft until things happen. The Jets were always picking between either an offensive lineman or a pass catcher. I think it was always going to be one of those two, depending on who was there at 7. I never believed the defense stuff. I think everybody that was saying that was assuming because it's Aaron Glenn, they were going to pick defense. But he's been saying over and over again, I was a defensive coordinator. That doesn't mean I'm a defensive coach. And he also is very involved in the picking of the players. And this is a team that needed offense more than they need defense. Like I think it would be defensible to pick 3 straight offensive players in this draft. And we can get into all that. But this was the right move. This is what they needed to do. I don't blame them at all. I've gone back and forth about what I would have done at number 7 between the guys that were available, but I do not blame them at all for picking Membou, and we can get into the details of that next.
Yeah, let's get into the. I actually saw, and this was an interesting note, watching the athletics coverage with Dane and Robert and Bruce Feldman doing a great job on that feed tonight too, and Derek Klassen as well. So the Lions, when their current regime, successful regime that turned around that franchise, took over, their first pick in the 2021 draft was the number 7 pick, and it was Penei Sewell, and that was where they started. And then they built
similar
it. So there's some
similar size
here.
players
You're looking
too.
for like little like.
Yeah, they both have similar size, and I think the knock against Membou is his height. He's 6'4". I believe Penei Sewell is also 6'4". So, if he even reaches close to that ceiling, Penei Sewell is arguably the best offensive lineman in the NFL, if not one of the 5 best. Like, you feel good about that. But yeah, anyway, keep going with what you were going.
That was my point. I thought that was just like an interesting tidbit that like, hey, if you want to keep thinking back to like how the Lions did this and are the Jets going to do the same thing, like that's just interesting that at 7, the first year they went with a tackle as well. But the big thing here is the old regime with the Jets. The talk was always that they were going to build this line. And we've talked about how like Joe Douglas finally did it, right? And then got fired. But now when you look at this line and you have what they had and you have coming back what they have coming back, and there was one opening, right? And it was right tackle. And you just like plug in this 20-year-old and you have what, a 22-year-old on the left tackle. And those are your bookends for, I don't know, a deck, like if all goes well, right? Like those are your bookends of this offensive line for 7-8 years. Like that's just a really, in my mind, like if you're building a football team the right way, like that's what you want to look to, is like that sort of setup for a team and an offense.
Yeah, I think a misconception about Joe Douglas is that he didn't invest in the offensive line. It was actually quite the opposite. He invested a lot of high draft picks and money in free agency in this. I think they a lot of times tried to, the old cliche of they try to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound or a bullet hole or whatever. They kept signing old aging guys that used to be good to try and fill these roles. The Dwayne Browns, the Tyron Smiths. Morgan Moses was a competitor, but he was definitely on the decline and was banged up quite a bit last year. Ryan Khalil at the beginning, like they've thrown money at veterans hoping they could fix it, when the best move ultimately is if you build the trenches through the draft, like the Eagles have done for so long. Like the Eagles generally have not gone out of their way to, like Jason Peters was an exception. I believe they traded for him back in the day, but the Eagles draft all their offensive linemen and they develop them, or they bring in guys like Mekhi Becton at a cheap salary and develop them. And
then they just locked in Cam Jurgens.
They've locked in Cam Jurgens. They've Landon Dickerson locked in, Jordan Mailata locked in, Lane Johnson locked in. Like this is the goal. You want to build from the inside out, and the Jets now have 5 starting offensive linemen that are under 30. I think you could argue that all 5 of them are at minimum good offensive linemen. Tyler Warren apparently was just drafted by the Colts. I'm not watching at the moment, but Colson Loveland went ahead of him, which was surprising. We'll get into that in a second, but anyway, so they have 5 starting offensive linemen now that are under 30. They filled the one hole they had on the offensive line. I think now you can say their depth is actually not that bad too. Like you plug in Armand Membou at right tackle, and now you have Chuks Okorafor as a backup. He's better suited as that. Carter Warren and Max Mitchell as backups. You have Josh Myers as a backup on the interior. Maybe you add another rookie on day 2 or day 3. This is as optimistic as you should feel about the long-term prospects of this offensive line as in a long time. I think going into last year that we gave this offensive line a lot of hype, and it was mostly okay. But you looked across the board. You had Tyron Smith. You didn't have to play Olu right away. You had Morgan Moses. We didn't know much about John Simpson. I feel good about this group in terms of like what the Jets want to do this year. They want to get out on the move. They want to run the ball. You have a really athletic group. Olu Fashanu, really athletic and strong. Armand Membou, the most athletic offensive lineman in this draft. Joe Tittman, really athletic, good size. And AVT when he's healthy, and and John Simpson is a mauler. So I think this is the group that they needed for what they wanted to build. And I think there was absolutely a case to be made for Tyler Warren. I think the biggest knock against the idea of picking Tyler Warren was the value, because there's less value in taking a tight end early. I think he would have been the number 2 receiver right away in this offense. He's a really good blocker, and you build around him, and he's a safety valve for Justin Fields. So, like, I would probably landed around like 51%. I would have picked Tyler Warren. 49% would have picked Membou. But, I don't blame them at all for this pick. I think it's a good pick. And now you can turn your attention to a pass catcher in round 2, whether that's a tight end like a Mason Taylor, or you wait till round 3 for like an Elijah Arroyo, or you get a receiver like a Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. There's some really good receivers. Historically, you can get good receivers and tight ends after the first round. The Jets historically have not done that. Their history of both positions after the first round is really, really bad. But this is a new regime, and this was the right move for where the Jets are right now, and it's a right move for the future. You look at next year, you have AVT and John Simpson are in the last year of their deals, but I think guard, I think it's easier to fill the guard position than it is to fill tackle positions, generally speaking. So you have your left tackle and right tackle locked in, and you have your center locked in. Maybe you can, I would re-sign John Simpson if you can early, get him while the price isn't too high. AVT needs to stay healthy for a year before you make any decisions on him. But yeah, this is as good as the offensive line has been. And so they're going to be a team that's going to run the ball, drain the clock. And that's even more obvious now to me.
So when you take an offensive lineman, because as important as they are, they're not flashy. There's always going to be like the look back, right? Like, whoa, look at that guy. And you figure like if Warren becomes this like great pass catching tight end, right?
We didn't mention this. Yeah, it's the second year in a row where the whole debate going in was offensive tackle or tight end. The second straight year, the exact same thing, and the same thing happened. They went with the offensive tackle. And last year, I still think Fashanu is going to be a really, really good player. Brock Bowers looks like he could be the best tight end in the NFL pretty soon, but
right.
I don't think that makes it a bad pick in retrospect. No. Like, it was the right pick in the moment. They needed O-line more last year. But yeah, it's just funny, that dichotomy of like that happening again. But yeah, it's going to be a thing. And this always happens with the Jets, the fans, the media. You're going to look at the guy that they were thinking about drafting and didn't. And if he plays really well, it's going to be LOL Jets. But, the process was right here. It sounds like they were in on Membou the whole time. They kept everything. They kept their cards close to the vest, to the Jets' credit. I don't know if it was them spreading all this false shit, or it was just people speculating for the sake of speculating. I'm sure it was a combo of the two. But they did a really
two things,
good job.
Right? Like they're sending out a smoke screen with them. All NFL teams should do that. And the other thing would be like if nothing's getting out, right? And you've mentioned it, that the leaks have kind of been sealed up here. If nothing's getting out, and it's a team like the Jets where people are craving information, you wonder how much like reporters just start like, maybe this is you know what I mean? Like,
there's a lot of logic leaps. There's a lot of things like that. Like, oh, there's defensive back makes sense in Aaron Glenn's defense, so maybe let's say he's tying to him or whatever. I'm not going to question reporting, because a lot of these people are very well connected. But a lot of times, like with the draft, what you're hearing is you're hearing it from other teams who are hearing rumblings or through conversations they had. Like, but you don't know, okay, so this guy heard from that team that the Jets are talking about this guy, but were the Jets lying to that guy that guy heard it from? Like, so yeah. It's draft season sucks. I don't envy like people like Diana, who did a great job. She was on top of a lot of the news today, but yeah, I'm curious to see how this latter half of the first round plays out. Actually, I'm not 100% Mason Taylor is going to make the second round. I kind of think he might get picked in the late first. By the time this pod, some people listen to this, they'll know for sure. But yeah, I don't know how many ways I can say it, but if I'm giving it a grade, it's a chalk pick, so maybe it's not sexy, but B+ A- in my mind. I think he's
that'll be the
player. Yeah,
that's what we'll see a lot of in the grades across the country. Will be that B+ A- range. You did speak to Membou because you are there, and we should have mentioned that you are there at the Jets complex right now recording. You're not at home watching on TV. You're actually there, and you got to speak to Membou. So obviously, I'm sure the questions weren't hard hitting in this environment where it's a guy that was just drafted. But what did he have to say about joining the New York Jets.
Yeah, he said at the beginning, he said that he had a feeling he was going to be a Jet, and he said when he woke up today, he had a feeling he was going to be a Jet. I think through his conversations with the Jets is where that came up. I think the quote that I tweeted out that's been getting the most love was when he was asked about how the Jets want to be like a running team, like a hard-nosed team, and how that fits his style. And he said, shit, whatever they need to do, it doesn't matter. Just run behind me. I think that's the kind of attitude you'd like to have in an offensive lineman. Sounds like he's still learning about a lot of the guys on the Jets team because he doesn't have a lot of connections. He said he hasn't seen much of Justin Fields and didn't really know that much about Olu. But I think he's got the right mindset. Actually, real quick, just so we give an actual scouting report, I just want to read some of his strengths and weaknesses off the beast so people kind of know like a little more about what they're getting from someone who has watched more of him than I have. He says his strengths are his body control and his movements. He's explosive. He's agile and patient and pass pro. He has a really good punch. Let's see. He's very durable. He played 30 straight starts at the end of his career. He finishes defenders into the ground and flashes a nasty demeanor. I think that's something
that's
really
what you
like
want.
I saw some clips of that. That's the kind of vibe you want. The weaknesses are his height, like I mentioned. Dane said his hands and elbows tend to start wide. He was penalized 3 times for holding in 2024. And he put it was he didn't have any experience at left tackle in college, but that doesn't really matter for the Jets.
He also started playing football in 8th grade, which is late, obviously.
Pretty late.
But did
same
play
with Olu.
a lot.
I think Olu I think wasn't until like his freshman year of high school or something.
Yeah.
So
and he's only 20 years old, even though he did basically start for 3 years at Missouri.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's why he was labeled as like the guy out of him, Banks, and Campbell as like was maybe more of a developmental than the other two. But that negates the fact that the guy didn't give up a single sack or QB hit last year. And I think his ceiling is higher than both of those guys. Will Campbell has really short arms, which historically
I was going to say that the comp, and sorry to interrupt you, but the comp that's going to be interesting, and it won't be on the Jets. There'll be no LOL Jets, but like the Patriots took Campbell at 4. And Campbell was, everybody had him as the number 1 guy in most rankings, but then the Jets get Membou at 7, and we'll see like how that plays out because some people have said that because of the short arms, Campbell's not going to be able to play left tackle. We'll see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I'd say that even just looking at Dane's scouting report, the fact that there's only like a couple negatives, and they are that he got penalized 3 times in an entire season, and that he can't play left tackle, like those are 2 of the negatives. I think there's not as many blemishes on him, and he seems like he has a good head on his shoulders by all accounts. So he's going to step in right away and be the starter. And offensive linemen don't always make the transition right away. It's not easy. They might say that he's competing just to say that he's competing, but it was the right pick.
All right. So we've talked about the quiet off season and they've done a good job of that, but it is the Jets. So we had this come up today, and I'll throw this on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Breece Hall this morning, just before noon, simple tweet, fingers crossed. And obviously the assumption when you see that tweet is like he's hoping that he gets traded.
Well, so there was a report from
Justina Anderson. That's the way it went, I think.
There was a report from Justina Anderson that she said she heard within the last week and a half or something like that there were conversations about Breece Hall being available.
Yep.
She's been on top of things all offseason, so it's very possible like that's vague enough that like I don't know what they've had conversations mean. Does that mean teams have called? Does that mean the Jets have called teams? I don't know. But I'm curious what would have happened if Janty fell to 7. I lean towards the Jets maybe would have traded back with the team that would have wanted him, like the Bears. But if he had been at 7, would they have, like, in light of this report, would like that whole dream have come to fruition?
Right, because it doesn't matter if you don't get Janty.
Yeah.
And they weren't going to trade up for
it. Just doesn't make sense to me unless they're, I don't know. I took it as maybe they were trying to drum up interest in their pick for teams like to make them think that we were about to pick Janty, and maybe Breece knew about it. I don't know. I don't know what the fingers crossed emoji means. He knew what he was doing when he did that. He might play dumb when we ask him about it.
Taylor says that he was just fingers crossed that they would take Membou. They got us. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll tweet and act like that's what he was doing the whole time. But there's other really good running backs in this draft, so I'd say we're still on alert. Like if they draft one of them early, but I don't see the value in trading. He's coming off a bad year. He's in a contract year, so you'd have to pay him. this is a good running back class, which reduces his value. Like, I'm not trading Breece Hall for a 5th round pick. I'm not sure I'm trading him for a 4th. Like, he's talented and he's young and he's inexpensive right now. So I lean towards, if there's somebody in the 4th that you're like, whoa, I can't believe this guy fell to the 4th. I think he's going to be a star, maybe. But I still lean towards him staying unless you were able to convince a team to trade a 3rd, maybe. Like, but I don't see that happening, and I don't know that the Jets are actively shopping him. So ultimately, I lean towards him staying. I don't know. I mean, I guess another scenario would be like a 2026 pick that's high up would be like an appealing thing, maybe. But I don't know. I still think Breece Hall is going to be a Jet ultimately. A lot of this has been tied to the comments Aaron Glenn made at the owners' meetings when he was asked about Breece, and he kind of deflected into saying like, we have 3 really good running backs, and I took that as more of a call to action for Breece to play better. And like, you need to prove yourself to this new staff more than we're trying to trade you. Because as others have pointed out, I think if you wanted to trade the guy, you don't say that. You say, we think he's amazing. We think he'd be the best running back in the NFL, blah, blah, blah. You do whatever you have to do to blow smoke up his ass. And so teams are more willing to trade for him. So I think he's ultimately going to be a Jet. I could be wrong. We'll see over the course of this weekend, but I still lean towards him being a Jet in 2025.
I just don't think you get better now by trading him and just replacing him with another running back. I know you have to get to Glenn and Muji, who are going to be speaking soon. Anything else to add before we let you go?
Yeah, I saw Jalen Walker was picked by the Falcons, which was another one that had been mocked quite a bit. Another guy that was tied to the Jets. I was curious if one of these type of guys fell far, if the Jets would trade back into the first. The fact that they're supposed to talk to us in less than 10 minutes from when we're talking right now, which would be 10 p.m. for if you're listening to this in the morning or something. So I lean towards them not trading back into the first, but who knows? We'll see. I am expecting to see some fireworks.
Yeah. So just behind the curtain, like teams don't talk to the media and then go make more picks generally.
Usually. Yeah. And historically, I've never seen that happen in the teams.
Because then they have to talk to the media again and they don't want to do that.
Yeah. They're like, hey guys, something happened.
We will be back tomorrow night with more reaction, and we'll be able to talk about their thoughts on Membou at that point as well, because you'll have talked to them and we'll get all that. So we'll keep you updated on when we will be hitting it tomorrow night, obviously, depending on when the picks are made and all of that. But it's been fun checking in here for 20-25 minutes on Membou, and the Jets offensive line is strong. We will talk to everybody soon here on the Flight Plan Podcast.